Today, we have the lovely DJ Ritu with us on our podcast. As people know, this series is all about the inspirational people that we've met across our lives. And I don't know if DJ Ritu, you even might have known that you've been like an inspirational individual for me. I think I've been seeing you for about over 2 years. Probably that's how long I've been going to the Good Good event on a Saturday evening at the end of the month. And I don't know why, but every time I see you, I just feel so inspired by you. Everything about you, just this wonderful, amazing woman who is so like, I don't know how to explain it, but you're just so confident and so cool. And I've always found that you're just so calm as well with it. You're just so grounded and calm, and you bring that energy of calmness and groundedness with you when you come to, especially to a place like that. Because I find people are quite high energy, and I feel that whenever I see you, this whole kind of sense of calmness comes. Every time I see you, I always just feel, what an amazing woman, what an inspirational woman that we have.
Would you like to introduce yourself and tell us a bit about yourself?
Could I just start by thanking you very much for
It's
your
okay.
beautiful praise just then? A lot of people comment on this calm energy that I seem to exude. And truthfully, when I walk into any nightclub, including my own club nights, I am not calm at all. I'm, I'm actually very, very nervous about numbers, whether it will go well, whether I will play well, whether people will dance. I should really be running yoga classes instead. So a little bit about myself. I'm of Indian origin. I was born in East London many years ago, more than 11 years ago. When I was growing up, I actually wanted to be an artist, a painter.
Oh, wow.
Oh,
And so I went to art school and thought that that would be my life, as an adult. But when I was an art student, I was going to a lot of clubs and listening to a huge amount of music at them. I learned to play three instruments. I did music O level. I was in the school choir, orchestra. And as soon as I had pocket money, I started to buy records as well. While going to lots and lots of club nights as a student, I thought, well, I'd really like to put together the music that I really like at this club, and the music I
Mhm.
like at that club, and the music I like at this third club. And one of the clubs I was going to got rid of all their DJs, and I asked if I could have a go. This is way back in 1986, and they said yes, tentatively. And I became resident at that particular club for the next 6 years.
Wow.
And that was playing pop, soul, disco, Motown. I always really saw what I did in terms of club work as a hobby.
Mhm.
But after maybe around the year 2000, it stopped being a hobby and became more of a career because it just got very, very busy with all of my other music related projects, which then by this point included BBC Radio, uh,
Mhm.
compilations for the Rough Guides, lots and lots of different things.
Wow. That's like, it's quite interesting how you tell that story, actually, because it sounds like you've always been creative, actually. You have that kind of creative, because not everyone has it. I don't have it. I know I don't. But do you know what I mean? Like it's quite interesting how that creativeness inside you kind of stemmed from drawing to music. In that space, what was the inspirational thing, particularly as someone that as an Asian female? How did you manage all those things?
Yeah, well, if we talk about the cultural factor, I mean, I certainly was not encouraged to even take up piano lessons by my
Okay.
parents. Um, the art, the drawing, the painting, they kind of were okay with as long as it didn't become a career thing. And I did have a big argument with my dad about accepting a place either at law school or at art school
Okay.
at the time, back in the 80s, 1980s. I think I was just quite driven and
Hmm.
had to just follow my own path. Having said that, I did also get a real job when I left art school. But to be honest, my parents didn't really know what I was doing with that either. Uh,
Okay.
but it was marginally preferable to me being an artist full
Okay.
time. So actually, yeah, when I left Wimbledon School of Art, I became a youth centre manager. So I
Ah.
worked with young people aged between pretty much 8 and 21 for Haringey Council. And I did
Mhm.
that for 14 years. And what I also did was I developed a lot of extra provision for girls and
Mhm.
young women from um, different heritage backgrounds at the time, in addition to managing the Muswell Hill Youth Centre
Okay.
and all the staff.
Wow.
And, I continued my music hobby on the side,
Mhm.
but it was when it became so time consuming from the year 2000 onwards that I really had to just kind of say no to the full time real job,
Mhm.
to take this up as my real job and become self employed, which was a scary leap into the unknown. The final prompt was that by 2000, I'd set up 2 bands as well,
Oh.
which was centered around the DJ as the
Mhm.
centerpiece of these
Yeah.
bands. I had 10 musicians and dancers that used to interact with what I was doing, playing an Asian underground type of DJ set, which
Uh-huh.
incorporated drum and bass, techno, trip hop, but with South Asian influences. And the bands became really, really busy. We started a tour all over the
Mhm.
world. I was doing 2 or 3 programs per week for the BBC at various outlets. So that was BBC Three Counties Radio,
Mhm.
BBC London, and BBC World Service, all prior to the BBC Asian Network being
Yeah, yeah,
set
yeah.
up. The Asian Network was set up in 2002, and I was one
Yeah.
of the first presenters there for
Uh-huh.
its first 2 years as it became a national digital station. So there was a lot going on, and I was out DJing 2 to 3 times a week as well. I just couldn't really commit to the full-time job and do it justice any longer. I was responsible for children and their families. So hand on heart, I needed to put that job to rest.
It's quite interesting how you talk about like a real life job and a hobby, and then your hobby becomes your real life job. You followed your passion and your heart by the sounds of things.
Yes, and I think the funny thing is that I never actually planned where any of the music side would go next.
Mhm.
I always left it to fate, to Kismet,
Mhm.
and somehow I think I was just given a lot of opportunities. I got very lucky in some respects. One thing connected to another. There was also the setting up of a record label in
Mhm.
1994, which was Outcast Records.
Mhm.
I was the co-founder of that. Being in the music industry did create a lot of connections as well.
Yeah.
So at
Yeah.
Outcast Records, we were the first label to promote and to create music that was very fusiony and from the British Asian perspective or experience. And as head of A&R as well, I
Mhm.
signed Nitin Sawhney to the label,
Okay.
Budmarsh, who became part of Budmarsh and Shri. We worked with Apache Indian,
Uh-huh.
so on and so forth. It was an exciting period, but another thing that also then began to lead towards the bid for a Radio 1 show to
Okay.
exist as well, whereby we could um, give a platform to British Asian music. That didn't come off, unfortunately, with the Outcast Planet 24 bid that we submitted.
Mhm.
And then I put in some more bids myself after that with
Mhm.
Pete Tong and Danny Rampling's producer, but none of them were successful. Um, but I think it paved the way for the program that came into existence in 2002, which had Bobby Friction and Nihal
Yeah.
as its presenters.
And I think it's almost like sometimes you have to knock at the door a few times to get through, and you're probably one of the first people that actually knocked on those doors and said, give us some space. We're also part of the local community. And do you know what I mean? And I think you probably don't realize how many doors you opened for people after you.
I'm aware of that door. that I open for people after me. Um, People quite often say to me, "Oh, have you heard of, are you in touch with Bobby Friction?" It's like, well, yeah, actually, there's a whole bunch of us that
Yeah.
preceded more high-profile
Hmm.
people, and in fact, the very first Radio One show that featured South Asian music was actually presented by Apache Indian,
Okay.
and that
Yeah.
existed in the 1990s. It didn't last for very long. Radio One only held
Mm.
the show for, I think, about 6 months. Um, so there was a whole kind of history beforehand, before 2000.
Yeah. I think this generation here, this generation, or maybe even my generation, do you know what I mean? We don't appreciate sometimes how actually there's a lot of work that's gone on before for us to be able to have a voice, or to even think about our music kind of being incorporated into, if you go into club nights now, people play good old Punjabi MC every time, don't they? Do you know what I mean? So I think that wouldn't have happened if people like yourself hadn't taken risks and hadn't, do you know what I mean? And hadn't actually had that kind of fortitude to say, you know what, I'm going to follow my passion. Do you know what I mean? Like, not everybody has that in them, I don't think.
Yeah. Um, I mean, I think one thing that we are lacking in the British South Asian community is a proper archive and a proper historical document of what people did.
Hmm.
And it's something I've always wanted to create, but I don't enjoy writing. And but I know it's something that does need to exist, and I think, I mean, I am going to highlight that a lot of the South Asian women that have grown up here in the diaspora have quite often been pioneers and
Mm.
trailblazers, and are very rarely acknowledged for what they've done. Uh,
Hmm.
if we look at singer or composers, for example, you've got Najma Akhtar, who she won the Asian Song Contest in 1987. She went
Oh.
on to create possibly one of the first Indo jazz
Hmm.
albums, or in her case, it was actually jazz ghazal,
Okay.
an album called Karib, and
Hmm.
that came out in 87 or 88 as well. And yet she will often not be mentioned, and people will usually only talk about Talvin Singh or Nitin
Yeah.
Soni, for example. Sheila
Mm.
Chandra is another one who preceded a lot of these guys as well, appearing on Top of the Pops in 1982 with her track Ever So Lonely and her band
Hmm.
Monsoon. And Sheila went on to co-found the indie pop label with her partner at the time. And you know, those are just two examples I can
Yeah.
give. And um, but a lot of the time they're not talked about, they're not written about. And if you say to people, name um, name three British Asian music
Hmm.
artists, or name three British Asian DJs, or invariably the first names that will come out of everyone's mouth will be male
Yeah.
names.
Why don't we ask Mahi if she knows any British Asian music artists, or Asian music artists? Who would you say?
Asian music artist.
Yeah.
Well, I'd say Diljit Dosanjh.
There you go. Yeah.
I'd say AP Dylan,
Yes.
and I'd probably say Goran Aujla.
There you go.
Okay, interesting actually, because we do get quite a lot of requests for all three of those artists at Kuch Kuch nights,
You
even
do.
though it is a Bollywood night. But they are so popular, those
Yeah.
three guys.
Yeah.
And you have not mentioned any of the women
No.
who are around at the moment, whether it's Yasmin Sandless,
Handlers. You forgot about her, didn't you?
Um,
Priya Raghu, Anushka Shankar,
Who else, Mum?
Miss
Who else?
Pooja. I'm just trying
Miss
to think.
Pooja. Yeah, we're trying to think of Miss Pooja.
And the two twins.
They're not singers, Neelu
Oh.
Bajwa and her sister. They're actors, actually.
Oh, I thought
They're
it was-
female actors. You've got Sargun. Is it what's her name? Sargun. Sunanda Sharma. She's another, female singer. And I guess even if I think, I mean, I'm not that close with the Ghazali and the Ghazals and the Qawwali world, but there must be female singers in that world as well that we probably don't even think about. You're right.
Oh my God, you've so got to check out Orchestral Kawali. And the lead singer is Abby Sampa. She used to be in my band
Uh-huh.
briefly towards the end before I knocked the band on the head, one of the bands on the head. But she has got the most heaven sent voice. And to hear her singing Kawali when, she's totally found the right medium for
Mhm.
but for her voice. And they're about to play the Royal Albert Hall
Oh, are
Orchestra.
they?
Yeah, May
Oh,
the
wow.
27th. They've got a date coming up, and they're phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal.
But our conversation just now just shows actually, even like we're two females, right? We're talking to you, and actually our exposure to the kind of masses is all men and male singers and male artists, isn't it? Really, like, it's kind of, hit the nail, what you were saying earlier. Actually, this example is a really good example of that. Like, and I guess as a parent, I'm thinking I should be exposing her to more of the, do you know what I mean? Or any
Yeah,
of my
Mum.
children. Yes, mum. It's my fault, is it?
But question mark then, Mahi, where would you say that you hear your music? Where do you discover artists?
On YouTube,
Okay.
probably.
Yeah, I mean that's also where I do a lot of discovery as well, and a lot of research. And um, so would you say that the women artists are in there, but they don't pop up on your YouTube feed, or you've
You mean
heard
like
them
Indian or just like in general?
general?
I mean, there are a lot of like women artists out there, but there's more frequently men. And I think if I had to say more men or more female or male, um,
So what if we divided the music up into sort of Asian music and then English music, for example,
yeah,
or American music? Are those artists different then? Do you see more females in those fields?
yeah, you see more females in like the English music and then more males. I'd say
Hmm.
me. I'd say I see more males in the Indian music.
Yeah.
So if you're looking at Western artists, you would
Mm.
definitely pick out, I'm assuming, Beyonce.
Yeah,
Anyone else?
Taylor Swift,
Anyone else?
um,
Ariana?
Ariana Grande,
See, they're all female ones
Olivia
now, aren't they? Yes.
Rodrigo,
Yeah, yeah,
who else is there? Katy Perry. Um,
to hear that contrast, because when we talked about Asian artists, the list was males. Whereas when we talk, like you said, Western artists, she's got loads to tell us for female artists, hasn't she? Yeah.
Adele.
There you go. Another one.
Still thinking of them, yeah,
Still
absolutely.
thinking it.
Yeah.
Whereas I think you're right. When we were trying to list the Asian female artists, we kind of didn't have a list, did we? Yeah.
I think there's a lot of invisibility around women in lots of professions, and that includes music.
Mm,
Certainly marginalized types of music as well.
yeah.
But I mean, this is a kind of a really good question that Tracy Emin, the artist, the
Hmm.
painter,
Hmm.
uh, asked on the streets outside Tate Britain
Hmm.
in a documentary. I think it was a Channel 4 documentary. And there she was, Tracy Emin, one of the greatest, most well-known living artists who
Hmm.
is female and British. Well, she's British, Turkish Cypriot.
Hmm.
But she stood outside the Tate and she said to passers-by, name 5 female painters or artists.
Okay.
And Most people couldn't.
No. Yeah. And it's quite interesting because we feel that the world's moved on, don't we? But actually just having this basic, like this type of conversation, you're like, actually, what has changed then since that time? It really sorts much,
Gender, when we
yeah,
think about gender pay gap, when we think
yeah,
about pensions, because of course, if there's a gender pay gap, it
yeah,
affects you when you get a pension.
yeah.
I know it's a bit too early for you to be
You
thinking
might
about
have to
that,
worry
Barbara,
about that, yes.
I don't
but
even have a job.
you're not married yet either, no?
No.
Okay. Um, but I can tell you, as somebody who I'm loath to admit this, but from that job I had in Haringey for 14 years, now that I've turned 60, I am now in receipt of that pension.
Wow.
I'm too young for a state pension,
But
but
you got
my
your,
yes, my Haringey pension, it just became payable very recently. And I was looking at it and thinking, oh my God, I wish I'd fought harder back then to um, to make sure that I was on the same pay grade as my male
yeah,
colleagues that were doing exactly the same job as me or less.
yeah,
And I was never paid on the same level as they were. And so it catches up with you when you're older and when you really need that money, when you really need that income, because you may not be as strong or as fit or as resilient to work as hard as you used to,
yeah, yeah.
and
And
also less employable.
yeah. And building on that, if you don't mind me asking, because you loathe to say it, but, you know, I'm just, again, this is why you're an inspiring individual. Like, you said you're 60 and how do you manage? How do you do it all? Like,
Do your ears not hurt?
The thing is, sometimes my ears fall off. Actually,
sorry about the question.
No, it's just wondering.
You're wondering.
Yeah,
Go on,
because
I think
like,
it's a really good question.
yeah, it is.
go on,
Go
go
on.
on. Ask it again.
Okay. Do your ears not hurt? Like, because like when your DJs should be really loud.
Um, I'm very careful with my ears. I know to protect them, and I've managed to, touch wood, protect them for all of this time
Yeah.
until I played at Fabric.
Oh,
Yeah, just over
okay.
a year ago, I did a DJ slot at Fabric, and the volume was absolutely deafening, and I couldn't get away from it either because the engineer um, was just cranking up the volume, and the speakers that you hear, Raj, when
Yeah,
you're
yeah,
in the
yeah,
nightclub, I generally don't hear those. I hear the speaker that's next to me,
yeah.
and I
Okay.
can usually turn that speaker up or down.
Mhm.
Having said that, Sway Bar is a bit of an exception because it's not very well designed for DJs. But in really good clubs and venues where which are correctly engineered for people that are there to dance and correctly engineered for people who are there to work, like myself, we usually have a separate volume control and
Mhm.
speaker, which is also close by us, so that we don't get a sound delay.
Okay.
So that we don't get a sound
Right.
delay by the time the front of house speaker sound reaches us, because for us to be able to mix two tracks and synchronize the beats and the tempo, etc., we have to cut out that very slight time delay, which could be a fraction of a second
Mm.
or something. So we always have a monitor speaker near us. At Fabric, the speakers, the front of house speakers, which are meant for audience, are trained over the DJ booth as well.
Oh, wow.
And consequently, I didn't even need a monitor speaker.
No, yeah.
And
This
if I
is
turned up the monitor speaker, I would have probably blown my right ear and not just my left.
wow.
As it turns out, I don't think I blew my left ear. but it has been painful ever since that gig, and that's been for over a year. It's really painful at times. It just suddenly it comes and goes. So
Mhm.
I know that some damage has been done, but my hearing still seems to be fine in that ear. There is an organisation called Help Musicians UK,
Okay.
and I am planning to make an appointment with them to get an ear test, particularly on the left ear,
Hmm.
and to get specialist earplugs for both ears. And in fact, when I played at the Boiler Room last year,
Yeah.
I took other earplugs with me, and I'm really glad that I did that, because when I got into the where was that? It was the Bukhara Centre in
Hmm.
Southall where they set up this particular Boiler Room episode, and behind, literally right behind the DJ setup, were huge, massive bass bins and a speaker stack. I mean, there was probably about 8 speakers there,
You can
including.
actually see it in the video because I watched your Boiler Room set actually, and it's absolutely amazing. And it was just so nice to see like an Asian female DJ doing the Boiler Room set. How did you feel about all of that actually, DJ? You do.
I was terrified at first when they when they offered me a slot.
Uh-huh.
I said no.
Oh,
Uh,
did you?
yeah, I kind of, on the one hand, I knew that for promo purposes, I needed to do it
Hmm.
because it's a fast-paced world out there,
Yeah.
and everyone with a laptop is a DJ now, or calls themselves a DJ, and um, and it's quite hard keeping up.
Yeah.
I mean, it is really difficult to keep up. And also, even if you try and keep up, or even if you have a different, a different skill set to some of the younger DJs that are coming out,
Hmm.
it doesn't mean you get the work.
Okay.
Because, and remember, if I don't get the work, my dog doesn't eat, and I don't pay my bills.
Hmm.
Especially with a very meagre pension from Haringey Council from many years ago.
Okay. Yeah.
So, um, so promo and profile all leads to work for what
Uh-huh.
we do in the music industry. It is just the way it is, as it is, I think, for what some other people do, like
Yeah.
perhaps some of what you
Yourself.
do, Raj,
Yeah.
as an empowerment coach, a life and empowerment coach.
Yeah.
And so yeah, my first instinct was to absolutely say no. I'd seen other people doing Boiler Room sets, and I was thinking, there is no way that I would not, um, punch someone if I had all of those people on my elbows and
They're
on my
literally
back.
there, aren't they? Like behind you. They're like so close, aren't
They're
they?
right
They're like
there.
here. And
Yeah,
like
they're right
everyone's
there.
like,
What's a
do you know what I
boiler?
mean?
So
I'd
is
have
it,
to,
is it like when you're
you know, when
DJing and then they're
yeah, yeah,
behind
yeah.
you?
You know, we watch them at Suki Mossi's house, don't we? Usually,
Oh,
where they're playing the garage
it's
music.
like that.
Yeah. So DJ.
Scary, scary, scary. I mean, the other thing is, to do what I need space anyway,
Mm,
because
mm.
I can't have someone, jogging my arm, or, accidentally jogging my hand off the decks, off the controls, I can't have someone shouting in my ear while I'm listening to the track that's playing in this ear, and listening to the track that I'm about to mix in that ear.
You
So
just,
all of that interference and interruption and disruption and squashiness. Just,
it's like everyone's like coming up to them, hugging them, and everything else. You're like, what's
yeah,
going on here?
it's like a no. I mean, Raj, like we have bouncers to keep
Yes.
people away from
Keep
us
them away.
at Kuch night.
Yes,
And
you
in
do.
fact, most of the clubs that I play at, if there's not a bouncer to do it, I'll get a friend to keep people away. We have notices up saying, leave the DJs alone, stay away, do not
So
disturb.
fast.
I give people filthy looks. That doesn't always work, unfortunately, and then we get bad reviews because, oh, the DJ was so rude, and it's like, well, if you're working with your ears and your hands and
Yeah.
your brain and your eyes, then actually, it's like other people needing to sit down and really, really concentrate,
Mm,
say, on writing a report, or, and you
yeah.
can't do that with constant interruption. And also, if I've got, you know, 1,000 people in front of me who are dancing, and I drop a beat, or I mess up a mix, or I do something like that, that's 1,000 people that turn around and go, "Oi!" It's a really, really big public failure. And um, and I'm not strong enough to really deal with that kind of public failure, to be frank, you know. So so I was just no to the thing. And then the fact that it was in Southall, I was in an even bigger no, because I thought, I mean, I've been around in this scene for lots of
Mm,
scenes for a very long time, including the Asian music scene.
mhm.
And I know how brutal um, people can be on that scene, and
Yes.
more so on the Bhangra scene.
Mhm,
I come from, again, the experience of working and being resident DJ at the very first weekly um, Bhangra club,
mhm,
which was Bombay Jungle at the
mhm,
WAG Club in just off Wardour Street near
mhm.
Shaftesbury Avenue. It used to be on Tuesday nights. That opened in 1993. There were fights all the time there. The guys were just constantly kicking each other. The women were kicking each other. So when they weren't dancing, they were fighting.
Like,
And it was the same at the Hammersmith Palais. It was the same at
yeah,
Cooper's Watford. It was, you know, and the last thing I wanted to do was be in Southall for a
with
boiler.
all, yeah,
A boiler room anywhere else, maybe Lisbon.
yes, that would be
Great.
nice. Yes.
Cyprus, yeah, great. But well, not so great, because I still couldn't deal with the physical
Yeah.
aspects of what happens at a boiler room when the DJ is what they call in the round, or in a mosh pit.
It-
And
Yeah.
then boiler room kept saying, "No, come on, look, you really need to do it. It's really important.
Yeah.
We'll support you. We'll help you." They didn't actually help in any way. But I did eventually relent and give in, and because, again, I was thinking, this would be so good for my career. It would be so good for me. And so I decided to do it. And I then spent, like a prize boxer, I spent the next 2 months in preparation for it.
Did you? Okay.
Yeah.
What did you
Um,
do to prepare for it?
yeah, good question, Mahi. I did a lot of things to prepare for it. Firstly, I needed to decide what I was going to play. And I did that in consultation with the boiler room, because I could see from the lineup that they were assembling, I
Hmm.
was going to be the only person over the age of 30, right?
Really?
Yes, pretty much in terms
Wow.
of the DJ
Yeah.
lineup. So I kind of felt that my role was to maybe bring out a set that was reflective of the early and golden years of the British Bhangra scene, um,
Mm.
and the kind of set that we would have played back at Bombay Jungle in
Hmm.
1993. The sets we were playing in the 80s and 90s, which were about blending and mixing Bhangra tracks with raga, with hip hop, with drum and bass was still very new at that
Yeah.
point, but later down the line, jungle and drum and bass.
Hmm.
Um, Swing was the other major style that we used to mix the music with, that what you would now call R&B. And um, so I kind of felt that was my job to
Hmm.
bring out this kind of retro playlist. And Boiler Room loved the idea. They knew that
Yeah.
no one else could do it. So they
Hmm.
were like, yeah, go for it. That's perfect. That's perfect. Um, and so then I needed to kind of construct the best set I could possibly play.
Hmm.
Um, and that meant going back through lots of my previous playlists, looking at stuff that I could bring in from newer music as well,
Yeah.
making sure that I got tracks in by um, uh, Sidhu Musivala, for
Yeah.
example. I really wanted to play Calm Down.
Yes. Yes.
I wanted to get that one in. So I wanted to kind of show that there was a connection between
Mm.
very new music and the music that a lot of British Asians were listening to in the 80s and 90s.
Mhm.
And then it was like, how do I get it all to fit? How do I get the tempos to match? How do I make this section create sections that will work? You know,
Mhm.
and there was various things that I did need to do at home with regard to even just creating clips and my own edits,
Okay.
that so I could like, there was one particular edit that I did at home, and I do things in the old fashioned way. I don't I don't sit here on Logic Pro or GarageBand
Okay.
and start moving things around. That my brain just doesn't really work like that.
Mhm.
So I do it in the old fashioned way. I actually get on my DJ equipment and I actually mix live, and then I
Okay, so
have
you
to
mix
do
it. Oh, wow.
I mix it
Wow.
live. Yeah, I use my tech skills. I use my fingers and my ears to do all of that. And with what I do, I don't make use of a lot of the AI technology and
No.
the things that you can now do with really modern
Mhm.
Pioneer CDJs, you know, where the damn thing does everything for you. I actually get bored with it doing everything for
Yeah.
me. I actually want to make my own mistakes and do it in a human way. And I think because we've lost so much control with what we do, you know, it used to be that we used to have vinyl records or cassette tapes in our hands. We could actually touch. There was a tactile aspect to
Yeah, you
the
could. Yeah.
formats we were
Yeah.
using. And now when I go out with just a USB stick, I can't touch the music.
Yeah.
You
Right.
know, so I do the next best thing. I kind of try and find a halfway compromise. The things that I also needed to prepare for with the boiler room, and this was a really crucial one. I had to practice smiling even though I was under pressure, because
Really?
I've been terrible at that throughout my entire career. I've really been bad at that. You know, usually when I'm DJing, my brow is furrowed. Sometimes I have my tongue sticking out, you know, by the side of my mouth. You know, I mean, I probably look as stressed as I'm feeling. And I knew that with Boiler Room, it was going to be a sea of cameras, and it was.
Yes.
And I actually, here in the mirror at home, I practiced looking unstressed and having a fake smile on my face, and
Oh,
had to remember to do that on the day. And on the day, I mean, I was nearly sick on those turntables.
really? What you felt physically?
Yeah, I was actually shaking. I was like this before I
Wow.
went on. I was rude to all the
Had to
boiler
let it
room
out
staff.
somewhere.
You know, they were like, well, you know, right, do you want to come and sit here in the back? And I was like, yeah, no, I'll be all right. No. Do you want anything to drink? No, no, no. And I just couldn't talk to anybody. I was an absolute wreck. I really was an absolute wreck. And
You don't come across like that at all. Like not even one tiny little bit at all.
I mean, the other thing also that was going on before the boiler room was I wasn't very well as well.
Mhm.
You know, for maybe about a year and a half, I've had a problem with my legs,
Mhm.
and what happens is they they get very cold
Mhm.
and shaky, and
Okay.
I have a kind of weird sort of weak sensation that goes through my legs, sometimes my arms. The doctors
Okay.
don't know what it is. The osteopath doesn't know what it is. You know,
Yeah.
the acupuncturist doesn't know what it is. But it's certainly worse when I'm stressed. And as you can appreciate, every time I go into a club setting, particularly one I've not been into before, I'm stressed.
Wow.
So just the week before the boiler room, I had to cancel 2 bookings because the
Okay.
this stress related thing had become so bad.
Yeah.
And I was kind of like, oh my god, what if that happens, you know, before the boiler room, that on the day, you know. But so somehow got through it. And one thing that really helped was I assembled a team around me. I went back again to the 90s, to when I set up my 2 bands.
Oh, okay. You went back to speak to them, did you? Or
No, I
okay.
went back to the learning from that
Ah.
I could see that boiler room is such a fake platform.
But it
I
seems
find,
to have just
I find
everyone seems.
Instagram the same. You know, it's so me.
Yeah, 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 yeah,
You
yeah.
know, and to be honest, that boiler room, while you're jumping up and down and looking really, or in some cases, people are looking really
Mhm.
sexy, you know, and all of that. And they're not actually DJing, they're not actually
Yes.
technically really doing anything. You know, all of this kind of holding onto the knobs,
Yeah.
they're not actually doing
Wow.
anything. They're
Yeah.
holding onto the knobs for dear life, right? And I also practice doing that at
Did
home
you?
as well beforehand. You know, I
Okay.
practiced, I stood in the studio and I jumped up and down to see if I could actually press the cue and play buttons, and to try and work out how I might.
Sorry,
So
you don't mind us laughing, do you? It's just
I,
like we're trying to imagine you doing this and
I had to practice a lot of fakery beforehand, how to kind of deliver this performance. It's a performance.
It
Yes,
is like you're performing, aren't you?
well, delivering the music and entertaining a crowd is a performance in
Yeah.
itself,
Yeah.
but this was like, now you have to think about the visual aspects of your performance.
Mm.
And what I meant by going back to the 90s was, when I had my bands and I
Mm.
had musicians and dancers, etc., that were working with me, it was helpful to have like a crew. It was helpful to have a little tribe around me. It's what all the male DJs had. They had, it was never just the guy on the decks, you know, there was
Mhm.
always the guy on the mic, and then there was the three other guys who wore
Yeah.
the jacket. You know, they were like, they were all sound systems, you know, Maximum Energy, you know, Hustlers
Yeah, yeah,
Convention,
yeah.
they were all, so they were never on their own out there. I was always on my own out there. um and I was a woman, and I was always older than like a lot of these guys, you know. So um so what I did was I assembled a little team around
Mhm.
me for this boiler room set.
Mhm.
I took in my old Dole player, Prithpal
Okay.
from Ministry of Dole, and then he wanted to bring his two daughters, who are
Oh.
only aged 16 and, in fact, 14 and 16,
Uh-huh.
because he saw it as a huge opportunity
Yeah.
for them and for
Yeah.
him. And then I two dancers that I really trust, Kajal and Shiva. They
Mhm.
just give off the most brilliant energy, and I feel very comfortable in their presence. And you can see this in the boiler room clip,
Yeah.
because at first I'm up there, I'm on my own, and
Uh-huh.
then Kajal and
Okay.
Shiva just kind of suddenly, I suddenly found them next to me,
Yes.
and it was like support. They were there,
Mhm.
they were with me, and and of course they were able to cover up with their brilliant and charismatic presence
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
dance moves. They were able to cover up my failings and my you know, my shortcomings, and so then I could kind of look a bit kind of serious every now and then and concentrate on what I was doing, because I had them
Yeah.
to deliver the visual treat that people look for in a boiler room
And I
performance.
think we all have the thing that we're good at, don't we? We all have a master of something, don't we? Do you know what I mean? That, you know, I don't know why in this kind of era we're expected to be everything to every. Do you know what? All these we're meant to be like these multi-talented individuals. Do you know what I mean? Like actually, it's quite nice to be a master of something, isn't it?
Mm.
Really, rather than, oh yeah, I can do a bit of that and I can do a bit of that and I can do a bit of that. But actually, like you say, you mix your music yourself, like literally get down there, you know, on your decks and things like that, and you're mixing your music like from scratch. I don't think a lot of people probably do that still, you know, and it's that kind of creativity, that technical aspect that you bring to your music. And, you know, I think the boiler room set is quite, and I'm glad that we talked about that, because I was quite interested in sort of hearing your perspective of actually doing that boiler room set. And it's quite interesting to hear your experience of it, because I think, like you say, it's you use these words, you talked about the chaos and all these other things. And I wonder if that's just a description of the world that we live in today. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Odd, isn't it? I don't know how Mahi and other young people it's not easy for you. It isn't easy for you.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry it's like that. But having said that, there are also, I mean, there are huge, you know, advances and
Mm.
advantages. If you can use all of this to your advantage, then good. What I have seen with some of the younger people that I work with who are in the Daytimers Collective or the Dialed In Collectives, who are relatively new, very new, in fact, South Asian young creatives collectives that started up during the pandemic online, and you know, are now out there everywhere, and they're so brilliant at what they do, and
Mm.
they stage events and festivals and club
Yeah.
stuff, and um, they're really, really exciting. But you know, some of the individuals that are part of those collectives or members of them, you know, they talk to me about their mental health all the time, and
Yes. It was.
I
Yeah.
am not surprised if, you know, because I know how much time I have to spend on social media
Mm.
um, to promote me and promote what I do, and it does take its toll on you. And of course, but I'm not one of those people that walks down the street with the phone in my hand and looking down at
Yeah.
my phone. And I do see a lot of younger people doing that all the time. It's like that phone is practically glued to the hand. And I think where possible in this tech kind of world that we live in now, it's really important to take media breaks. It's so vital. And as much as possible to not, you know, fair enough, admire Beyonce,
Mm.
admire Adele and Taylor Swift, but don't ever get sucked into thinking that you need to be like them
No.
as
No.
well.
And I agree with you on that point. And I think, you know, you can, like you say, get sucked into social media. Like Mahi is pretty okay, I would say, but there are times when she's literally stuck to her phone. And I have to say, Mahi, come on, let's get off this phone right now. And I think it's quite hard with this sort of next generation of people. And I don't know, Mahi, if you want to say something a little bit more about that.
I mean, everybody now has their own opinion and they feel like they want to share it. And if they don't, then like something's going to happen. Um, but I
I love
think what
that
you
you
just
said
have,
that. That's
Sorry?
that's a really good quote. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
but I think just now you just have to ignore it. And I think like this is why I like reading so much, because reading takes me to a different world, while social media, it doesn't do that. It just brings you to other people's worlds when you just want to live in, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And it
Well,
just shows you how some perfect someone else's world is, but your world isn't like that.
You do start comparing yourself to others, don't you? That's what happens. You're looking at the thing and you're thinking, and and you know, I have this ritual that I do now. Like it's not a ritual, but it's like in the morning, my alarm goes off, it's on my phone, but I don't look at my phone till I've had my breakfast and done, you know, showered and everything else. I don't look at anything until I've done all those. Sometimes it's an hour or an hour and a half that I've looked at my phone. Yes, I will have logged on my laptop to work and stuff like that, but I kind of refuse to engage in anything like that first thing in the morning, because I actually found that it gets upsetting after a while, doesn't it? You can feel yourself like it's like, I don't know how to explain, but you can feel like this anxiety sort of building up, like, oh my God. La, la, la. But I recently read the book, read this, I'm trying to remember the title of the book. Um, it's in an orange cover. The Courage to be Disliked. I read that book, and in it, it talks about seeing people as your comrades. So rather than as competition or whatever, seeing people, everyone around you as comrades. And I think that was a bit of an eye opener for me, actually, that actually, you know what? These people are just my comrades. Just see them as my comrades and nothing more than that. They're just people at the end of the day. You know, you still have to just do you. That's all you can, you know. But I think the world that we live in today is so different. I don't know what you think, Ritu, about all of this, you know?
I just think what both of you have said is just so valuable, and there are such pearls of wisdom in what you've said. And also, I like the idea that I think the two of you have got even far more restraint than I have about you using a mobile phone. And I consider myself as somebody who has quite a lot of restraint around that. I mean, funnily enough, I I have to have this conversation with my dad, who is
Mm.
he's 93, and he's addicted, practically addicted to his tablet. So
Oh,
so what's that about? Because this is the dad that I used to sit in his lap when he used to make technical drawings.
yeah.
He was an engineer, and then he became then he set up a business and blah blah blah. But he's retired now, and here he is addicted to YouTube, and quite specifically news, so-called news
Yes.
videos that are coming out of India and
Yeah.
coming out of a certain propaganda machine. And I know that a number of my peers, their parents are having the same problem because it is so what's the word, pernicious, or
Yeah.
Sometimes it feels like your grandparents use technology more than you do.
Why
you
are you
don't.
saying that? Why?
Because my grandma and granddad, well, grandma still worked part-time, but Candy Crush or TikTok for grandma, and then granddad is YouTube and TikTok, and they're on it more than me.
A form of addiction, isn't it? And
Yeah.
we all probably at very suffer from it in varying degrees.
Mm.
But it sounds as though the people then that are actually older than us suffer from it a lot more. So
What do they
um,
do all day? Sit there.
yeah, same with my dad. Yeah,
And it's like you're trying to talk to them. They're not listening. They're just not there, are they?
no,
They're not present. And you're like, okay, so you've got nothing to talk to me about. You've got nothing to say.
yeah, it's not. It's not good. I mean, I love the fact as well that you both read, because
Yeah,
I just think reading is like, it's real.
Yeah.
yeah.
We really do actually learn from reading.
I think
Um,
people have forgotten how to read. I think sometimes. I think it doesn't seem to be a thing that a lot of people do, or they listen to audiobooks or and like how you like to you like to feel the decks and everything else. Like I'm one of those people that likes to feel a book.
Yeah, I don't like people say use a Kindle. I don't like using Kindles. I like that actual book.
Turning the page over and
Yeah.
getting you receive the book and you see it,
You like the smell of the book, like there's a certain smell,
Yeah.
and when you get a new book, and it's just like, but if you got a Kindle, yeah, it's like online books, yeah, you can't have that.
I find really special about a book, and again, yeah, the tactile aspect. But I also, I mean, I really was interested in what you said, Mahi, about that everyone feels they've got to give an opinion these days, and it's like you have to, as other people have said, you have to kind of write yourself into the story, into other people's story,
Mm.
otherwise it doesn't really exist.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, I think that's it. That's a really interesting notion, and you're right, that does happen. But then Raj, as well, what you were saying about being like viewing other people's posts as or those people as comrades
Mhm.
rather than competitors. It is so hard. I think we've been brought up a lot to achieve and to be successful,
Yeah.
whatever that means, and be the best and be better than people. I mean, even just at a very basic level, passing exams at school,
Mm.
are you top of the class or are you bottom of the class? Nobody wants to be bottom of the class. And so it's like achievement, achievement, achievement. And I think then there's this constant competition going on. And we know that that happens as well on a personal level outside of school.
Mm.
You know, she's got a brand new Mercedes. I can't afford a car. She's got the best husband. I don't,
Yeah.
or she can cook the best and I don't. We're constantly comparing ourselves to other people. But I think, as you could hear probably quite clearly from what I've said,
Mm.
I mean, you can look at the boiler room video and it might kind of look like I'm calm and I'm, you know, in a good space and I'm happy and, you know, and I'm jumping around a lot and, you know, and everything. But you can hear that behind that facade, as I've explained, there was a crumbling wreck behind that. And I'm sure that's true of a lot of the so-called perfect people and perfect profiles that we see.
Yeah. Oh, he's got a question for you. Do you want to ask this one? I think this would be quite a nice one.
Can you please share some memorable moments or highlights from your career that has shaped you as a DJ or as a person?
Yes, there are many, because it is a journey and you have lots of little kind of flag posts and points along the way. I suppose one really pivotal time was, so there was this new club opening in Islington. It's
Mhm.
actually now the venue which is known as the O2 Islington Academy. It's a very big venue used for concerts and events. Um, and Anyway, these new promoters, this is in 1988, they were planning to set up a world music club. At that point, the concept of world music was very new, and the
Mhm.
term had only just been coined, to describe music of African, Latin American, Middle Eastern, Asian, so on origin. And anyway, so this guy phoned me up because, you know, we couldn't text or we didn't have mobile phones or anything, or WhatsApp or anything back then, or email. He got my number from someone, rang me out of the blue, and he said, "Hi, my name's Don Tyler, and yeah, I'm involved in setting up a new club at, you know, the Paradise Club in Islington.
Mhm.
So it's going to be like a world music place, and it's going to be on every Thursday, and we need a Bangra DJ." And I said,
Okay.
"Mhm." And so he said, "Well, are you a Bangra DJ?" I was like, "No, I play ABBA,
Yeah.
you know, Stevie Wonder,
Yeah.
Michael Jackson, that kind of thing." And he said, "Well, you're Asian, aren't you?" And I said, "Yeah, well, I mean, I do have one Bhangra record, and I've got a few Bollywood, you know, film albums, but
Mhm.
I don't really know my way around Bhangra." He said, "Well, we don't know who else to ask, so do you think you could try and just make a mixtape or something?" And so I went off to Southall. Um, Southall was where we always went when I was a kid, you
So did
know.
we.
Yeah, because I don't know about you, Raj, but I grew up in East London, around Ilford, around that
Uh-huh.
area.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, well, I'm from Luton, so yeah.
See, Three Counties Radio,
Yeah,
for
yeah.
22 years.
Yeah.
Okay. So, anyway, back then, Ilford and Seven Kings, surrounding areas, there was almost zero South
Mhm.
Asian population. It was almost exclusively white. We were the only brown family on our
Mhm.
street. I was the only brown kid in my class at school, you know. So if we needed to get, you know, ginger, yeah,
Yeah, anything.
adrak, you know, or chilies, or you know, jeera, haldi, anything. My parents used to make this trip to Southall in Dad's old Ford Cortina. It would take us what seemed to be about a day to get there, but looking back, it must have been only about 2 hours. And then you had the long trip home, you know.
Mm.
Um, and I knew that if I needed to find Bangra music, as Don called it, I needed to go to Southall.
Mhm.
So um, off I went. You know, took ages to get there, even by train. And then I there were so many music shops. It was amazing.
Mm.
I didn't really know which one to go into, but so I ended up at Verdi's, um, and just kind of trawl through the
Mhm.
all the, you know, the records that was stacked in racks there, and I didn't know what the hell to look for, so I just picked out all the ones with nice covers, And I ended up with a really big pile of records like this. I put them on the counter. Mrs. Verdi was there on that day.
Uh-huh.
And I said to her, could you play me just a little bit of this record?
Mhm.
And she said, okay. So she had a record player behind the counter, and
Yeah.
so she puts the needle on the record, and she let it run, and I was like, no, I don't need to hear that amount. If you could just like take the needle off and put it on the next track, that's enough. Yep, 5 seconds, 10 seconds.
Yeah. So you listened. Yeah.
That's what I needed. I just needed like little,
Yeah.
little samples of whether I felt it was even going in the right direction.
Hmm.
So I came out of there about £100 lighter, which is,
A lot of money in
back
that
in
time.
1988, £100 is a lot of money. And those mixtapes that I was talking to you about earlier, Mahi. So yeah, I made up this. I recorded a Bhangra mixtape. It was possibly the worst you'd ever heard in your life. But I posted it, snail mail, posted it to Don Tyler in Islington, and he thought it was wonderful because he didn't know any better. He was a white guy, so it was like, this is
Yeah.
great.
Right.
And I became the resident Bhangra expert at this new
Really.
club, at the Paradise Club in Islington. And so what can I say? It was so interesting being there because obviously I learned on the job. We
Hmm.
started to get, I mean, the crowd that came to this club, and it was packed every Thursday, 700 people.
Wow.
It was mostly white people that came there, but gradually a little group of Latinos started to come for the Latin music. A little group of
Mhm.
African people started to come for the African music, and the little kind of posse of Asians started coming in from
Mhm.
Southall mostly, and they would very politely bring records for me.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, as a present. In fact, one of the main guys who did this was Pinky. He was the son of the guy that owned Moti Mahal
Okay.
in Southall. And Pinky was always bringing me records.
Oh.
He would say, "Look, this is the latest album by Hira. You'll like this one." And I take it home and I think, God, that's a damn sight better than what I'm playing at the club at the moment. So,
Why did you use this one?
I mean, they really kind of educated me, and I learned a lot. And by this point, I was aware of the Bhangra daytimers. I
Huh?
started to go to some of those, and because the way that you consume music now, say on YouTube, it's at your fingertips. You open
Mm.
up your laptop,
It's
switch
instant.
it's there, or it's on your phone.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Whereas we couldn't, it was
No.
really hard to research into this kind of music. We had radio stations like Radio 1, Capital Radio, but there wasn't like a proper like Asian music
No.
station. Nothing like
No.
that existed. So we couldn't listen on radio. We didn't have computers or laptops. We didn't have mobile phones. We didn't have YouTube.
Hmm.
So you could only find out about stuff by really going
You
to
have to go.
South,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
going in a record shop, or maybe reading. There weren't even magazines at that point.
You literally had to go and buy the cassette, didn't you? And then listen to the cassette, and that was how you knew what the music was. There was no other way of, com- do like, we didn't communicate music in that way, did we? Before, we literally had to go and buy and then you'd listen to it. They play a little bit of it, and then you go, oh yeah, maybe I like that song, maybe I don't like that song. And there'd be like 8 to 10 songs on a cassette. Would you mind showing?
So this one is it was a mixtape done by the Unknown DJs. This is what would be known as a bootleg. I might even turn it up the right way for you.
Yeah.
It's a bootleg cassette tape, and so there's the track listing and the inner sleeve. I mean, the amazing thing is that even with these little tiny cassette tapes, which are what, less than 5 inches. Sorry, you don't work in inches either, do you? um,
Yeah.
uh, you still got quite a lot of information, and
Oh,
I mean,
but if you show Mahi the tape thing and how it sort of,
constructed.
yeah, look.
Gosh, I never thought way back then I'd be even describing how one of these is constructed. But okay, so you've got like these two plastic spools which are inside the plastic casing of the tape, and the two plastic spools kind of swap um, 1/4 inch tape, which is, yeah, which runs um,
Across the top.
yeah,
Yeah.
it
And
runs.
you'd put it in like a player that it's
Cassette
like a
player, yeah.
cassette player, and it would play the cassette, well, the music really for you.
So
And
it's
go on.
magnetic tape. It's magnetic
Ah, is it
tape.
magnet? I never knew that.
So, so consequently, you have music that is recorded onto the tape in the way that you now have recorded music that goes as a digital file um,
Yeah.
into a USB stick.
Yeah. So, and it used to go from like one side to the other. So you see where that all that tape's on one side, it would all that thick tape there. Sorry,
Yeah.
I should move my arm. That thick tape would all be onto the other side. And then you
Yeah.
have to rewind it to make it play the song. Like there used to be like a forward and a rewind.
Look.
There you go, yeah. And it would move across.
Yeah.
Actually, I remember one gig I was exposed to music from other parts of the
Rest of the
world,
world. Yeah.
um, and that's partly why I still do a world music program now, because
Mm.
I've had so many years of being around music from Africa and well, from all the continents,
Hmm.
and I'm not stuck with this thing of I can only listen to music if I understand the language. That doesn't
Okay.
really matter to me as long as I'm not playing anything that's offensive to anybody. I understand melody and I understand rhythm and I understand hook lines.
Hmm.
I understand
Hmm.
the feel of a song. Um, that's what counts for me. So, I mean, one of my most favorite forms of music is it comes from from Egypt,
Yeah.
or the kind of
Yeah.
Swana region, or as
Hmm.
it's now called, but the Middle East. Um, and Turkish music I fell in love with a long, long time ago. But um, yeah.
So it sounds like you've had this kind of amazing journey in your life. Do you know what I mean? Like, where you've sort of lived all those things that you wanted to do. You're well traveled, you're well, you're kind of well versed with local musics and cultures and all these sort of things that a lot of us probably have not even an inkling of. On top of that, you also got an MBE as well.
Hmm.
Do you want to share a little bit about that?
Yeah, that was kind of a surprise. um, I suppose, as you've highlighted, Raj, I think I have had a really unusual careers and life, and I think I've been incredibly lucky to have
Mhm.
that. Um, it has given me the opportunity to travel. I've played in more than 36 countries,
Wow.
so um, and to sit on a plane and you know someone else is paying for you to go somewhere, and to be honest, you may not actually see much of the country you go and play in, if I'm honest with you. There's
Mhm.
sometimes you fly in, you do the gig, you remember your hotel room from, I don't know, that time in Berlin,
Yeah.
and the gig and the venue, and you don't remember anything else because you fly out the next
Okay.
day. That
Yeah.
happens sometimes, but there have been more longer and more memorable
Mhm.
trips with the MBE. Um, so there happened to be three different nominations. How the actually a whole other side to the honours system, whereby you are nominated by your
Mhm.
peers. It might be other people that work in the arts or the
Yeah.
creative sector. And prior to going to pick up the award in November at Buckingham
Mhm.
Palace, in fact, two different people contacted me the previous year, and they said, and they are in the creative industries. In fact, well, actually, one's a lawyer, the other one is in the creative sector
Mhm.
and has been for many many years. And they they needed to know whether I would accept an award,
Okay.
because there's a lot of work that goes into anybody actually putting together a nomination.
Mm-hmm.
They have to collect testimonies from, I can't remember how many other people. The whole thing's got to be written. It's all got to be submitted. It's not a quick thing, and there's no point in them nominating somebody who is going to say, no, I'm not accepting this because of
Okay.
the colonialism or
Mm-hmm.
the associations with empire. And I had my own um, reservations about accepting an award, particularly after this many years of watching Boris and Sunak and all the rest of them, you
Yeah.
know, what they do. I mean, they over and over again they really tarnish that the reputation. And I've always had a problem around the empire,
Mm-hmm.
because my parents grew up in pre-partition India. They were, quite frankly, victims of the partition and of the empire building and of the British legacy,
Mm-hmm.
and pre-legacy. Um, and So I really kind of had to sort of think about whether I would accept something like this. And in
Okay.
the end, I decided that I would, and it would be partly for them, because you know what we said earlier about how um, my parents of their generation, they don't really understand what I do. And
Yeah.
and when I was a youth centre manager, they thought I was a social worker. And to be honest, I was kind of a social worker, but I wasn't really so
Mm-hmm.
whereas they understood BBC, they can understand things like that are about institution, establishment, something they're familiar with. So I knew that something like this they would understand, and I don't know how many years they have left. My dad is 93, my mum is 88.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I knew it would mean a lot to them, and actually it would mean even more to them because they were teenagers when India was under the British
Yes.
Empire rule. It was almost like saying, well, thanks, and now we're taking a bit back, you
Yeah.
know. Um, so yeah, I decided to accept it. I knew it would mean the world to them, and it did.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
then I got the news. In fact, then there was a third nomination that also went in. I don't know who that was from,
Okay.
but somebody who was writing a testimony for it. So there was three different people that nominated. And then I got the letter from the cabinet office in June last year. Um, and I wasn't allowed to tell anybody. So, and again, I'm like kind of thinking, oh God, what if one of my parents, you know, doesn't live, or
Yeah.
so I was like, dilemma about that. How can how soon can I thought, sod this, I'm going to tell them. So I
Yeah.
told them anyway, but I said, you've got to keep it quiet. So then that was really hard for them, because especially my mum, she wanted to just, she wanted to blurt it out everywhere,
Mm-hmm.
obviously. And every time I spoke to her on the phone, every time I saw her, she would say, have you heard from Buckingham Palace yet when you're going to collect the award? Do you know when that was the only thing on her mind. It was all kind of, what are you going to wear? Uh, we'll pay for what you wear. It's
Oh.
like all of this. I mean, she had nothing else on her mind for, for the 5 months that it took before I finally went to Buckingham Palace.
Uh-huh.
So I'm really glad um to have had this for them.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
For me, I don't know what it means. I mean, there are some people that are not happy about me having accepted it, and there are other people that are very, very, very happy for me to
Mm-hmm.
have it. The award was for services to music and broadcasting. Um, in fact, actually, there's some other scrolls of paper that arrived recently from the establishment to do,
Okay.
I don't know, it's some invitation to some kind of even song thing at
Oh,
Christmas. So yeah, going to Buckingham Palace, oh my God, that was such an experience.
really?
And they have it's like open house there. You can go and visit. I
Uh-huh.
highly recommend you do, especially
Oh,
if you
really?
like art.
Uh-huh.
Amazing.
Yeah.
It was
But
like it was being at the V&A. It was, you know,
it's really nice.
it was just, well, it was chandeliers. It was, you know, collector item paintings on every wall, paintings by Turner and Constable. So you can imagine, as an artist,
It would have been
I
like,
was,
yeah.
yeah, I was like a kid in a sweet shop with this. It was like so amazing. And of course, the day was, you know, it was quite emotional. You're only allowed to take 3 people with you, so I took my brother, and I took the woman that wrote, that she dealt with one of the nominations,
Oh,
and she collected
nice.
the testimonies of people, and she wrote the main, I don't know, it's called
Yeah.
citation or something.
Yeah.
She did all of that. She used to, yeah. So she, and she did all of that voluntarily. She didn't
Mm,
ask for anything. So I thought, out of the 3 places, I should take my brother and take her and her son, who was
mhm,
9, because he will
mm,
have never been to, well, she'd never, none of them had ever
yeah.
been to Buckingham Palace before. So I didn't feel able to take my parents because they're not very mobile.
Yeah.
It would have been very difficult to bring them to London, and
Yeah.
for them to be able to cope with a long day like that.
But don't you think that it's almost like the universe in its own way? And I hope you don't mind me saying this, but it's like the universe in the way, in its own way. You gave so much to the music industry, and so it in at a time when there was limited anybody, forget gender or anything, there was limited interaction from the Asian community into music, and kind of knocked on so many doors. But actually, it probably is the universe maybe giving back to you for everything you've done as well. Because often we don't see, I think it is important for people to be recognized for their achievements, and like you say, there's the colonial aspect to all of that. But if you think about the reason for why you've got the MBE, it's all to do with all the contributions that you've made, to music, the music industry, and that is precisely why you're so inspiring. Do you know what I mean? Like, if we kind of think about the whole conversation that we've had, that is precisely why your determination, you've kept going despite whatever's gone on around you, and I think a lot of people don't have that, do they?
No, and I'm amazed that I have it, because it doesn't, I yeah, it's like I'm not conscious of having it. It's just,
Mm,
I just keep going. It's just there. It's what I do. Um, but and it's not been easy to keep going over and over again. It's not been easy to keep going. But I think, you know, it's lovely to have the acknowledgement. You know, quite often, again, if we go back to gender disparity, imbalance, what I said earlier about women not being acknowledged, or our histories are quite often, we're written out of history, actually. So, for example, you know, I mentioned the record label. You know,
mhm.
if you Google Outcast Records, on Wikipedia, I'm not mentioned in it, and I was the
Okay.
co-founder of the label. Um, so that's just one example. We are quite often written out, and
Mhm.
so actually, this was something that maybe people can't write me out of,
Yeah, yeah.
and that was another reason why I also thought that through as well, and I kind of thought, well, take it. You're not
Yeah,
sitting here, you know, covered in awards.
yeah.
Um, I mean, if we again look at the Boiler Room
Yeah.
experience, you know, one of the social media sites that was at the Boiler Room was the UB1, UB2.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. And they've got a very, very large following on
Yeah.
Instagram and Twitter, and I don't know about Facebook. Um, and they put up a video of everyone else who was on that Boiler Room session, and not one of me.
Okay.
Mm. So the women are, we are we are very much in a minority, completely in a minority. Um, and
It's
so even though there's very few of us, we're still perceived to be enough of a threat to not be
true.
written about, or to have, you know, anything that we have done or achieved credited to some guy.
Yeah. It's like I said earlier that we feel that the world's moved on, but when you talk like this, it doesn't feel like that at all, does it? Really, that and even in the work that I do, you know, it is hard as a woman. Do you know what I mean? I think whatever you've got to do as a female, everything always feels like you're on this uphill struggle, and you know, I just find that when just listening to somebody else talking about a different profession, and actually it's similar for your profession as well. Do you know what I mean? Like I just feel that I don't know when this would change. Do you know what I mean? I think that's some of the questions that are going through my mind. Like, I've got my lovely little daughter here, and I'm hoping that through her life, hopefully some of this kind of gender disparity will change.
Well, I mean, Mahi's your daughter, and you're going to want the best for her.
Mm,
And I keep kind of hoping that, um, say, a lot of the guys that are my age, or your age, Raj, or
mhm,
older than us, or younger than us, that they also have daughters. Do they
mm.
not want the same equality, and equality of opportunity for their daughters? Surely they must do. Um, and I'm sure that, I mean, we have seen change. We've seen,
Yes, yeah, yeah, yeah.
but I don't think we're seeing significant change. But I do understand that when it comes to EDI,
Mhm.
um, um, that there is, change is very slow. It's very slow, and sometimes it is two steps forward, one step back,
Right.
or we've still got a way to go. We still have a way to go in it, and we have to. I suppose. I mean, I have to remember sometimes that power. If power works for certain people, they're going to want to hold on to it,
Yeah, yeah.
because why give up that power if you don't have to?
Mm.
And guys, you know, have more power than we do, whether that's physically or whether that's socially, politically, economically. Um, it is how it is, and very few of them are going to hand it over on a plate to
It's-
us lot. That's
yeah, why would they?
to, but even though women hold up the sky,
Oh, we do everything, don't we? Mostly, yes.
well, you do everything. I mean, I just think you're incredibly inspirational because I found it very hard to bring up, two dogs, and I don't know how you manage three children and a full-time job and studying. And I like when I saw that on it was probably maybe a post that you did on
Yes,
Instagram,
yeah.
and I was just thinking, oh my God, how does she do that? Because it's like, do you ever sleep?
I sleep quite a lot, actually, believe it or not. Don't I?
Yeah.
Um,
Where do you fit the sleep in? But it's also the emotion of everything that you're doing, because all of those things require not just physical energy, they require emotional input as well, especially presumably the young people, the children.
I think I just always remember that these guys are, well, you probably can say it, but they're my priority. So whatever else, if I can't do anything, if they need me, then I'm here. Everything else then just becomes after. It just has to wait. And I think I've had to change my mindset around so many things. Like, I've changed the pace of our life. So we're not in this kind of sprint anymore. We're more in a slow jog. Do you know what I mean? Like we've changed a lot of things, wouldn't you say?
Yeah.
Do you think you for acknowledging that? It's very nice, kind of you.
No, I still
Um,
think you do a huge amount, and it's not easy. Not easy
no,
being um not being easy being a single parent, for sure.
yeah. Any words of wisdom that you would like to offer to young individuals like Mahi?
In terms of any career, or in terms of,
Just of life. Any
well,
words of wisdom in life that you would offer to young people?
well, that's a really big question, isn't it? Um, I would say be bold, be brave. Remember, you've only got one life, um, and try and just be confident.
Mhm.
Because I think one of the things that also has held many of us back is we weren't instilled with a lot of confidence.
Mm.
We were taught to be humble as well. So, you know, yeah, go out and enjoy life is a really important thing, but safely as well, obviously.
Very
Thank
much for
you.
today. I think we've really
Enjoyed it.
we really enjoyed it. We definitely have. And you know, you like you said yourself, you know, you've had this amazing journey, you know, and it's so lovely to hear. And I think children or young people might not hear this kind of do you know what I mean? Hear the type of story that you've got to tell about your life. And I think it's really important for people to hear that actually, you know, life can be whatever you want it to be, actually.
Yeah.
You know, and that's why I think your story is so inspirational. And you know, you are an inspirational person, Ritu. Really, definitely you are. You know,
Yeah.
and I think Mahi's like, yes, definitely.
Don't forget, Mahi, your mum is also inspirational. So
Yeah, she is.
there
And
are
I'm very
And
lots
so
of
are
grateful.
you, Mahi. Yeah, yeah. I think it's been lovely, lovely. Thank you very much. And Mahi,
Thank you so much. And